I want to listen to something he said about his ability to wiretap and read, if he chose to, the president's email. Let's listen to this statement that he made on video.
My desk certainly had the authorities to wiretap anyone from you or your accountant to a federal judge to even the president if I had a personal email.
Mavanee, that sounds grandiose to a lot of people, and there are some experts who've come out since hearing that and saying, no, that's not possible. There's no interpretation, technical or otherwise, in which they think that's possible. Do you think that some of the things that he's been saying and some of the things he said on that video are exaggerations?
My experience with him, in my experience, he wasn't prone to exaggeration. So, I mean, certainly I don't know. I'm not an IT person. I did not do the sort of things that he did. I didn't have the sort of access that he had. I don't know what he was capable of doing and what he wasn't capable of doing. But really, I'm here to speak to the fact that he is a friend of mine. I think a lot has been made of the fact that he didn't graduate from high school. And what I find interesting about that is that he made a big deal of it just in our day-to-day conversation as friends. I think he was slightly embarrassed about it, which I find interesting because he did end up getting a GED. He did take some college courses, and he's an IT person. And in my mind, an IT person often comes to that knowledge on their own. And so, you know, someone such as Bill Gates, for example, I don't think he ever graduated from college. So, you know, I feel like a lot of IT people teach themselves. And I always considered him to be, I don't know because I didn't supervise him, I didn't do the sort of work that he did. But I always thought of him as sort of an IT genius. So, for what it's worth, from a friend.
Right. And did he ever talk about his view of the world and his view of politics and the way things should be? I understand his expressions of disillusionment, but did he ever say, you know, we shouldn't be doing this and we should be doing X instead?
No, and I mean, we were friends, and I don't remember having a lot of political discussions with him. So this isn't really something I can speak to. I can speak to his character. I can speak to the fact that, in my opinion, he was always a loyal friend and a good guy. He was very introspective. He thought long and hard about things before. He thought long and hard about the consequences of things before doing things, in my experience with him.
I want to play you something that Ron Paul said during the last presidential campaign because, as we now know, Ed Snowden contributed to Ron Paul's campaign and presumably, if he voted, possibly voted for him. So let's listen to what he said about Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda, which was the specific interests, obviously, of Ed Snowden's.
Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda have been explicit. They have been explicit, and they wrote and said that we attacked America because you had bases on our Holy Land in Saudi Arabia. You do not give Palestinians a fair treatment, and you have been bombing. I didn't say that. I'm trying to get you to understand what the motive was behind the bombing. At the same time, we had been bombing and killing hundreds of thousands of Iraqis for 10 years. Would you be annoyed? If you're not annoyed, then there's some problem.
Did Ed Snowden say that, for example, like Ron Paul, that he thought that Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda were provoked in their actions by actions of the United States?
I don't remember having conversations about that, so I really can't speak to that. I'm sorry.
And just one more detail of that kind. Anything about Israel? Ron Paul, for example, wants to end all aid to Israel. Was that something that Ed Snowden thought about very much?
Sorry, I wouldn't. That's not something I would know.
Okay. You said in your piece that you would have advised him, you wished you had a chance to advise him not to do what he did in terms of this security breach. Why would you have advised him not to do this?
You know, I think national security is really important, and I don't know. I would have counseled him to take a more measured approach. I don't condone breaking the law. I'm an attorney, and so I think I can't condone breaking the law, really. But I actually do believe in law, which is one of the reasons why I find the current debate interesting, and the idea of national security versus privacy, and whether or not there has been some executive overreach. I find all of that an important dialogue for us to have, but I would have counseled him to perhaps go about things in a different way, through activism, through lawsuits, but not through leaking top secret information.
Do you agree with him, with your experience, that that our national security apparatus and intelligence community is what he calls, his words, the architecture of oppression?
That's not something that I would say.
And that's the point. What I'm wondering about in there is does he go to a level of exaggeration? I mean, I can understand having some sensations that point in that direction, but that statement, for example, strikes me as a very serious overstatement about what for him is a very serious matter.
Perhaps it is an overstatement, but again, I'm not privy to all the information that he was privy to. But, I mean, I generally speak of things in a more measured way.
Well, I guess the final point that I want to raise about him as a person, because you're our insight into that, is his sense of balance, his ability to balance things, and his ability to balance conflicting ideas at the same time, which is an intellectual maturation process, which, by the way, we hope occurs to some degree in college, which is one of the reasons, I think, whether they said it or not, that some of the senators were surprised, and I think Barbara Mikulski was getting at it, saying, you can be a great swimmer, and it doesn't make you a Navy SEAL, because there's more that what the personality has to include in order to be an IT guy for the NSA. You may be a perfectly great IT guy for Google, but not have the same kind of maturity that they need in the NSA. And what I'm wondering about is his personality, has it developed that kind of maturity that can balance these things and look at certain things and have a perspective on them, or is it a personality that allows certain aspects of things to get exaggerated, and he can look at the United States government and think of aspects of it as the architecture of oppression?
I'm thinking back on my own college experience and then my own law school experience as well, and I'm not sure that attending the classes that I attended necessarily contributed to that.
Well, let me just stop you there. What do you think is the difference between you and your friend Ed when you look at the American government and he sees the architecture of oppression and you don't? What do you think is the difference between the two of you there?
It's a good question. I do think that there are some issues, actually, and I do think that this dialogue is very important. I think that there has perhaps been some executive overreach, and it could maybe be scaled back. I'm a big advocate for for judges and for search warrants, and I definitely think that there needs to be oversight, especially in an area such as this, in the intelligence world, when there aren't journalists who necessarily have access, who can sort of bring things to the light of day. I think it's so much more important, perhaps, to make sure that we have the appropriate amount of oversight. So I don't know why it is that I sound different when I talk about it than he sounds when he talks about it. But
well, Mavanee, because there's a huge difference between overreach and oppression. Those are very, very different things. I think you and I can both agree that there is government overreach, and there's a lot of it in a lot of different areas, and surely there must be a great deal of it in the intelligence community. But there's a very big difference between overreach and oppression, and that difference may be, I'm suggesting, it may be a difference of the maturity of the frame with which you look at things. And then again, it simply may be that Ed Snowden has a level of information that the rest of us may never have. But